Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Top of the Grid, hosted by myself, Amber Jones, and the fantastic Scarlett Archer. Now, Scarlett, this has been such a long time coming. We talked about making a podcast for so long, but why don't you tell the viewers and the listeners why we created this podcast in the first place?
Definitely. I mean, every time Amber and I see each other, it's all we talk about, wanting to start a podcast. So I'm so happy that we've eventually, made it happen. So Top of the Grid is a podcast all about motorsports, all about the different fields within motorsports. So we've got some really exciting guests coming up, truck drivers, racing drivers, people behind the scenes. It's really exciting. And, we wanted to also have a podcast where people can come for advice because, as a parent, even as a driver, it can be a bit daunting, not really knowing what the next steps for you should be. So we want to be able to, get advice from people and put that out there, get advice for people coming into the industry and, all the different things that you can really have access to.
We created Top of the Grid because we really wanted to make motorsport more equal, and that's why our slogan is driving motorsport's future together, because we want men and women to come together and push forward to make it an equal sport. We do know it is a male-dominated industry, and Top of the Grid is going to help break those barriers and give more opportunities to women and highlight fantastic women in the sport from all different industries. But before we head into the episode, we are highlighting a fantastic brand, Regen Optics, and we are giving you an exclusive discount. If you use the discount code TOPOFTHEGRID15, you will get 15% off your order. Regen Optics are a brand specialising in gaming eyewear designed to enhance visual experience and protect eye health. Their products are tailored specifically for gamers, focused on comfort, performance and style. Should we get into the very first episode?
We definitely should. We've got lots of exciting questions to ask each other.
Okay, so the structure of the first episode is going to be myself and Scarlett interviewing each other, so it gives you just a little bit of information of who we are, and then we are answering those questions that we always get asked. So Scarlett, do you want to take it away and then we'll swap round?
Yes. So, Amber, you have done so much. I mean, if anyone looks on your social media, it seems like you pretty much do everything in the motorsport world. You're like in the cars, outside of the cars, all different places. I mean, I can't keep up with you. So why don't you just explain exactly what it is that you do? Because, I mean, you can't do everything, but that's what it seems like you do.
That is so true, Scarlett. Like someone said to me the other day, what, you're a presenter, sort of like what type of work do you do? And I'm like, how long have you got? Honestly, because every single job is different. Literally, have you got a week? Have you got a month? Let's just sit down. Because I think when you think of, normal presenters, they can maybe just be put in a box. So it's like, oh, I'm an event host. I'm a pit lane reporter. I'm this, I'm that. I think I've had the luxury of being able to do and still do so many different types of presenting. So that's why I say I am an event host. I'm a driver media trainer. I also do a little bit of pit lane reporting. I've done esports and general presenting. So I am sort of literally in every single pocket of motorsport. So every day is completely different to me, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
No, it's so fun. I mean, it's like you never really know, what's going to happen next. And sometimes that can be a bit daunting because you're like, you need to be doing something, but also it's so exciting because it's like, meeting so many new people, making new connections. So how did you end up in the motorsport world? Because I know that's not, initially where you started.
Yeah, so I always loved motorsport when I was a young girl. I don't know where that came from because I always say it was my dad, but he said, I only watched Formula One. He's like, never encouraged you, to get into the sport. And I loved karting. I adored, like every single birthday was go-karting. I get all my friends, I go, right, we'll go and go-karting. Some of them hated it because they were my friends. They still came. And then I wanted to be a racing driver, which I think most young people that are racing at that age, they do have that aspiration of, I want to do this full time. Obviously, my dad was like, who's paying for this? We're not a super wealthy family at all, so we couldn't really afford it. But my other love was acting. So I went down an acting route, really wanted to be an actor. I was doing it, in school, high school, A-levels, outside of school, and I set my sights on drama school. And it was my dad who said, I don't think you should put 100% into the acting. He's like, there are struggling actors out there that never get their big break. And my worry is you can be the most fantastic actor in the world, but if you don't get your big break, you're going to be working in a pub your whole life, struggling to pay your rent, and then, having to change your dreams. And I took this into consideration and thought, he's got a point. And he did say to me, if it's what you want to do, completely do it. But this is just my advice.
Yeah.
And he was like, why don't you do acting and something else. So you have that backup. And I was like, actually, that's such a good point.
That's so
Everyone,
smart.
exactly, like it's so, so intelligent. So I do owe a lot to my dad. But everyone around me was like, you would be such a good presenter. And I just never really thought, because I loved acting, I never even considered that like presenting was something I could really get into. And I'd never done any of it before. And we had these like games in drama classes, which you probably will know as well, Scarlett, like warm up. So they got us to do loads of
Oh, they're my
improvisation.
favourite. They're always so fun.
Yeah.
It's like you want to spend the whole lesson just doing them
Doing that.
instead. Like,
Exactly.
could we do one more?
Literally, and they're like, come on, girls. Right, because I went to an all-girls school, and they were like, come on, girls, we've got to get into the actual class now. And we're like, no, I want to carry on with the game. But we used to do an improvisation game of Jeremy Kyle. I don't know if you know Jeremy Kyle, the show. Is it still on?
That's so random.
Yeah. And I was always the presenter, but I didn't pick to be the presenter. The girls were always like, Amber, like, you should be Jeremy Kyle.
So you didn't even realise that, you probably had a natural gift for, talking and presenting like that.
Literally. It was just, for me, it was just all fun. And then all the girls were like, you should really be a presenter, like genuinely. And then that's why I was like, okay, acting and presenting, let's give that a go. Went to university, and then that's what I did.
Wow. So what was your first like proper presenting job that you got?
My first job was actually with Aston Martin Formula One team.
Oh my gosh.
I was at university one day and I never had any other presenting experience, and I'd only done like 2 weeks of presenting classes at this point. So again, the whole 2 years at university, I hadn't even done any presenting at all.
Oh my gosh.
And then I got the call from my friend who was an Aston Martin engineer. And this was on like a random Wednesday in my second year of university. And he was like, hi, I know you do a bit of presenting. So are you available on Friday? Like, our host has dropped out and we need a host at Aston Martin Formula One team. And I was like, let me get back to you on that. Let me get back to you. And I like ran round uni. I was so terrified. Like, I got the train down to Silverstone because I didn't drive at the time. Well, I could drive, but I didn't have a car. And then got in a taxi, arrived at Aston Martin F1 HQ, and all the nerves just fell away. Aww. They just dropped. It was like I was meant to be there, and it went amazing. And the team really applauded me afterwards. And they were like, wow, this is your first time doing it? I was like, yeah, this is the first time. Still terrified. But it went amazing. It was so good.
You kind of got like thrown in at the deep end, but I mean, it's amazing that like your nerves just melted away. I always say that like, everything happens for a reason, and like you wouldn't have, gotten that job if you couldn't handle it. And I'm guessing that you learned so many things from it. I mean, it must have been amazing. What do you think is the biggest thing that you've learned from that job that you've kept with you?
Oh, that's a good
difficult question because it's such a massive job, like for your first, thing to do. Maybe it could have been like, I'm guessing you did loads of preparation with the little time you had, and like something about confidence maybe, because I'd have been so nervous, as my first job. And a lot of people say, sometimes you have to fake your confidence. So
yeah, it's true. It's so true. I think in terms of what I actually learned, I think I learned a lot about myself as opposed to what I learned in terms of presenting, because one, I found out very quickly, I'm great under pressure. I was like, okay, we only had 2 days to prepare, so I can turn around questions and research super, super quick. Yeah. Even despite feeling nervous and under that high pressure environment, I still was confident, was fine. Like, I was interviewing the team principal, Mike Crack, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Oh my, like, he is Mike Crack, the team principal. But it went seamless. There were no issues. And I had to interview like 6 people at once. And it was half of them were in the room with me, half of them were online. So another thing was, okay, I can do hybrid interviewing. I can do a little bit of both.
Hybrid.
I'm okay with that. And also obviously interviewing multiple people at once, that's a whole different skill as well, because it's like, how do you make the conversation go naturally, not just having set questions per person, then moderating a panel as well, making sure people don't interrupt each other and you add your own input. So for me, that just confirmed, okay, this is the job for me. I know what to do. I know I can do it. Thrown in at the deep end. So the rest of my career, hopefully, is going to be quite good and quite seamless, because I already had the foundations and the skills from day one.
So one thing we've not really touched on, I know you said that, you started with go-karting, but, I've seen you behind the wheel quite a bit now, not just in go-karts. So how did you get into driving, different vehicles?
Again, I think thank you to my father for putting me in this industry, because obviously having that love of go-karting when I was younger, I used to go to all the tracks with team sport, indoor karting. And I would go and I would beat the boys a lot of the time, and I'd
Yeah.
bring a lot of my male friends, and they were so annoyed. I used to bring my friends' dads as well, and I would beat all the dads, and they were like,
And they were annoyed at you.
yeah, they were like, this Amber's quite fast, isn't she? And I was like, thank you, Dad. I want to be a
Thanks.
racing driver. So yeah, I think obviously I loved it so much as I was younger, and then choosing to be a presenter, I thought that's sort of it for the racing. It'll always just be a bit of a hobby for me. Luckily, I've been given so many great opportunities to drive single-seaters, GT cars. I do a lot of karting at the minute as well, and pro karts. And I think being in that environment and expressing that I love racing, it opened up so many opportunities of like, oh, you're a presenter. You can come present this for us, but you can also come and drive this car for us.
Yeah.
And I'm
Like all these other
whoa.
opportunities.
Yeah, it opens up a bigger world, and I think it just gave me more job prospects. It's like, oh, it's
Yeah.
not just standing in front of the car and presenting, it's also sometimes being behind the wheel and
Yeah.
presenting. So it's been so cool. I'm so lucky for that.
Yeah, it's like in other kind of, like, say with like the stuff I do on Sky, like, it's really helpful to know how to like edit and things like that, even to know how to record. Like having another skill on top of that just makes it like that bit more kind of like, it just opens it up a bit more for yourself, because it's like, oh, she's not just a presenter, she can drive as well. It's like you can do two things. And also being able to be in the car, have a perspective of, how the drivers are feeling must be
Yeah.
so useful as well. I mean, I've only done like go-karting a couple times, but it must be so useful to you, like you're talking to drivers and you kind of have, you have a good idea of what they're feeling, the force that they're feeling, the emotions that they're feeling as they're driving. Do you think that's helped you when speaking to drivers?
Definitely. I think when I look at my performance of first coming into the industry and then now being in the industry, my questions are so much more technical, analytical. And at the beginning, when I did a first GT job, I didn't know anything about GT cars. I knew nothing. So my questions were definitely more open-ended. They were definitely more casual. And I was with a fantastic presenter called Piers Pryor, and he was a driver himself. So we really bounced off each other, and I was learning all the knowledge on the job. I would literally go in every single garage from my first day, got there like 2 days before the championship started, went around every single garage, writing down notes. I'm like, okay, what's this car? What are the properties? Talk to me about the aerodynamics. What's this? Talk to me about everything mechanical and technical. And that's how I was gaining all of the knowledge. So I got stronger and stronger every time I presented. So obviously now, doing sim racing, doing real life racing as well, has 100% helped me. And I'm still getting there as well. I'm still getting more knowledge, and my questions are so much more technical because I understand what the drivers are feeling, what they're thinking, what they're experiencing. So it's definitely a bonus, I think, if you have that knowledge.
So in recent years, do you think that, people's attitudes towards women in the motorsport world have changed? Have they improved? Or do you think, it's just the fact that we've seen more women coming into the sport that's made us think that?
Definitely. I do think the attitudes are changing. I don't think
Yeah.
we're there yet. And that can be like a whole host of reasons. The older generation, because they've grown up with it just being a male sport, sometimes they might not give into it so easily. It's so unusual for them to see women in the sport. So, that comes into it. Women have so much knowledge, and they're using their voices, and they're coming to the forefront. They are getting merited for that. There's so many opportunities now for girls to enter the industry, and it never even went through my mind that I couldn't be a presenter in motorsport. So I do think the landscape is changing.
Yeah.
There's just so much, more change that needs to be done, I think.
Because there's literally, like, there's not one single reason of why a girl can't do it. It's like crazy to think about. Like it because of how many people have, said it, and because we've not seen like a girl, say in Formula One for, absolutely ages, it makes you think there's something stopping girls from doing it. It's just the numbers, really, stopping girls from getting into it. There's nothing physically or even mentally, that's stopping females from being good at motorsports. And I mean, we've got so many amazing, female drivers that have completely proved that wrong. And I mean, it's going to be exciting because we've got so many of them coming on the podcast.
Yes,
So,
we
we're going to have some
do.
amazing chats with them. But, the way you put it there, it's just so refreshing. And I'm sure that people are really going to, appreciate hearing that, because there's literally not one logical reason why a woman could not be a good, driver or anything. It's crazy.
Exactly. There's no limitations at all. And
Yeah.
people like to say, oh, it's mentality. Oh, there is a little bit of physical limitations. That there really isn't. Of course, there are going to be biological differences with men and women. And we all know that, and we all acknowledge that. And it doesn't mean that, a woman can't do it. When it comes to mentality, like, I love that you brought that up. Like, is it a mental thing? There shouldn't be no mental limitations. Definitely, I think it's a personality thing. And people like to say, oh no, because women are overthinkers and, women are a bit too cautious. Maybe generally speaking, men are more bold and brash and women are more cautious and they like to think about things before they make a decision. Of course, we know in racing, there's no time to think. There is no time. It's quick, fast reactions. That corner's coming up to you now. What do you do? Do you overtake? Do you not overtake? And I don't think it does come down to men and women. I really think it just comes down to personality.
You never meet two people with the same personality. It's like you can have a really introvert, cautious boy, and then you can have a really extrovert, fast-thinking woman. And, you can have the opposite. Like, every single person's different. It's not like you were born a girl, so you have a specific mentality. You're going to be really, you're going to think about every little move you make and be really shy. It's not like that, is it? I mean...
No. Definitely, it is so much about the person. You see that in Formula One, all the different driving styles, the different drivers, because of their personality. So that definitely comes into it, I think. And if someone is a bit of an overthinker and they're a racing driver, they just have to work on that. And that's working on their racecraft and on their skills. So definitely, there's no reason at all why women can't be in the sport. And there's so many fantastic women, like you said, that we have interviewed and are still interviewing on this podcast. I'm so grateful that we have the platform to do that. Like, we have so many amazing guests. Genuinely, you're not prepared, everyone. No, I swear.
You're going to have so much amazing advice, so many amazing stories. I'm very excited for it all to come out. So, Amber, just to finish off with my questions, I want to ask you, what advice then you have for young girls, or just young people in general wanting to get into, say, the motorsport world or move up the ranks in the motorsport world?
If you're wanting to enter the motorsport industry, and this can be if you're an engineer, a racing driver, a presenter, in the marketing team, whatever that is, the most important thing is to network and make those contacts. And people don't realize that. They sort of send loads of cold emails and they don't meet the person face to face, and they're like, but I've done this and I'm so qualified for the job. If they don't know you, you might not be the top pick. And that is the sad thing. They probably have so many people emailing them. So my biggest piece of advice is always go to your local tracks. And I think people get fed up of hearing that advice, but go to your local tracks, talk to people, how do they get in their jobs, and befriend them. Don't force it, don't try and have this big agenda of, if I speak to them, then they're going to get me a job. Just be super natural. Just chat to them. Become friendly with them. Yeah, just be friendly. Exactly. And as well, if you're more introverted, and that can be quite difficult, I always say LinkedIn. Get on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn's so good.
LinkedIn is great. It is becoming a bit more sort of populated now, maybe overpopulated. But I always say, go on LinkedIn and put your CV out there and put all your work out there and try to make those connections on LinkedIn if you do struggle with doing it in person, and maybe message someone and explain you are quite shy, but you'd love to do this and do that. Can they point you in the right direction? Finding companies, finding organizations like Girls on Track. Fantastic. They give so many opportunities to girls. So if you're a little bit shyer, you can, speak to whoever runs the page at that time, who's the social person, who is the founder. Find these people and try and make those connections, I think. And hopefully that works for everyone.
Yes. Well, Amber, you've given some really great advice there and an insight to your absolutely crazy, busy life. So thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you, Scarlett. And now it's my turn to interview you.
Very exciting.
So excited, because Scarlett, you've just had a fantastic career at your young age as well. Can I just point that out? You are so young and you've done so much. Like, your CV makes you look like you're 40 or 30. Like, genuinely.
I'm busy, so I kind of just do what I'm doing and then go back to school. And then sometimes I do sit and I'm like, it's kind of cool that, like, like, because people at school are always like, it's so cool that you've interviewed Lewis Hamilton, but when I'm doing it, like sometimes I don't even realize what I'm doing because I'm just so excited. Like I get really excited about things, and I just find everything so fun. And then sometimes I do sit back and I'm like, oh yeah, it's kind of cool. Like it's quite impressive sometimes, and I'm like, oh okay.
You need to have those moments of just, you know, allowing yourself to be like, wow, I've done this. This is so cool. How did I even get here? Because I think in this industry, it's so easy to just go to the next job, go to the next job. And then you don't even look back at what you've done. Everyone around you is like, wow, you're doing fantastic. And you're like, am I? Oh yeah, maybe I am. And you need to remind yourself constantly. But take us to the beginning. So how did this career come into fruition? I know you do a little bit of acting, presenting, journalism. So how did that all start?
Yeah, so it all started with like musical theatre. So my mum just wanted to get rid of me on a Saturday, so put me in some like stage classes. So I went, and it was like singing, dancing, and acting. All kids were doing them, so I didn't really think much of it. But then when we started doing these like stage shows, I absolutely fell in love with them. So at the age of 5, I started doing like Joseph and then Jesus Christ Superstar, and I was in Carmen and Nabucco on the stage, and I just absolutely loved it. But again, we didn't really think much of it because, you know, I was young, so I had so much confidence to just go out and, you know, be on stage in front of loads of people. And then we went to the Natural History Museum in London, and someone approached us from a modeling agency. So I did some like modeling shoots, some commercials, and then I started doing some short films. So when I was about 9, I think, or maybe 8, I went to Italy to film like a short film about Syrian refugees. And I absolutely loved doing that. And my mum could just tell that I was really confident in front of the camera. And then I started doing some other acting bits, and that really picked up, and I was loving it. But, you know, I was still going to school at the same time. So I wasn't really thinking that, you know, I'd make a career out of it. And then I got a job on a YouTube series called Kitty Zoozar, and I really loved doing that. It had like 2.5 million subscribers, and it got about 65 million views a month. And
Wow.
I did that for 3 years, and I was loving it. And then as I came to the end of that, we went into lockdown, and I couldn't do any filming anymore, and I missed it so much because it was basically all I did apart from school. I did dancing, you know, filming, and then school, and I loved it. So I decided to do these Shakespeare plays online. So it was like a group of people from all over the world. So I was in England. There were people from China, America, Canada, Germany, everywhere, waking up at crazy times to do these Shakespeare plays. And then I emailed Sky News saying that I was doing them. Like we found, you know, a contact from Sky News. And I emailed and I said, like, I'd love to do a report and put something out about, you know, still being able to do my thing that I love, you know, despite, you know, being locked down and not actually being able to go out and do things. So I did that. It was about 3 minutes long, so I thought it would just be a one-time thing. And then we went back to school after lockdown, and it was freezing in all our classrooms. And I came home and I was angry because our teachers had like cups of like hot stuff, and we weren't allowed that. They had their coats on, and I was sat there like shivering because we had to have the windows open for ventilation. So I asked to do a report about cold classrooms, and that went out. And then we were on holiday, and the director phoned and was like, Scarlett, do you want to introduce Boris Johnson to a press conference? And I was like, okay. So I was a bit nervous, but I did that.
Okay,
and then I just got a job on the show, and I was meant to do like the stuff just from the north, but then I ended up filming every week. And then the way I got the F1 job is completely different as well. So shall I go into that?
Yeah, definitely. Like this is the whole progression of your career. We want to know.
I'm giving you the whole story here.
You are?
So then one time we were like sat at Sky, and actually I'll go back a bit more. So my family in Canada loves like Formula One, and my mum reminded me of this the other day. So one of my cousins actually used to build go-karts when he was younger. Like just not like proper go-karts, but just like, you know, things, go-karts out of things that he had. And I used to like, I found videos of me in them, like going about in them, but I completely forgot about that. But my granddad, he really liked Formula One. He really liked Michael Schumacher. And I always grew up with like my cousins watching it, but I always noticed that it was like my male cousins and my male, you know, uncles that were watching it. But for some reason, I don't know why, I wanted to sit with them and watch it. So I did, while all my other like female family members went off. But I was always kind of drawn to it. I'm not too sure what it was about it. I think it was just because, you know, it looked so cool on the TV, and I liked sitting with my family and watching it. But I was never really like too into it. I watched the races, but I didn't like, follow it that closely. And then when like Drive to Survive came out, I was getting really into it. I was following them. I loved like being able to see a more personal side of the drivers. So I think that's what got me more into the sport, because I was like, wow, like, each driver has their own personality. It's not just about, watching them go around a track. You could find out loads about them. And then I was sat at Sky and I heard people talking about like an opportunity for young people to be more involved with Formula One, because it does get like kind of stereotyped as like an old man's sport, kind of like a white man's sport.
Yeah.
So I heard that and I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I'd be great for that, because, I love talking and I already had a passion for Formula One. So I was like trying to just get myself in there. So I did as much research about all the races that I could. And then I just kept talking about them. And then they picked people and I ended up getting picked. And we went to Budapest. And then that's where I got my first taste for like commentating and for presenting. I did some pit reporting and it was just amazing. It's one of the best experiences I've ever had.
How do you then balance, schoolwork and your career at the same time? It's a very intense career. It takes a lot of your time. There's a lot of travel. Like you say, there's a lot of script learning or rehearsing or whatever. It's very time consuming. So then how do you balance both? You're still at school, you're studying, and you still plan to stay studying and go to university. So you are Superwoman at this point, Scarlett. How do you do both?
I think at the beginning, when I first started getting busy with like Sky, I didn't really think about the impact that it would have on my schoolwork. So I was really like not bothered about copying up notes when I was like done. I kind of just thought I could turn up to the lessons and have missed the last 3 lessons and be completely fine. So I kept doing that for like a good 6 months, maybe even a year. And then it got to GCSEs and I was like, I've missed a lot here. And I was like, Mum, yeah, I think I've missed quite a lot of school. So, my school's really, really supportive. Like if I miss school, they just send me the work on like a stream somewhere and I can get notes from my friends. But at first it was really hard to balance it, because it'd be like, I'd learn my script and then I'd be tired and I wouldn't want to like do my schoolwork. And then it's like, it's hard to keep up with homework and things like that, while also copying up work. And then if you don't copy up work before you get to the lesson, you can't learn the next thing that we're doing because I missed the thing from before. But I've kind of just learned to be proactive, because I know it will just be more work for me in the future if I don't do it right then. So I've started to I do my homework like as soon as I can, like after I get it, because then it's like one less thing to think about. And I just make sure I copy up all my notes and I go to like extra lessons. So like my teachers have put in place like extra lessons for me during the week. So it might be at lunchtime or in like a free period or in form time. So that's really helpful. But also I think it's about just listening to yourself. Like I can tell when I'm getting overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I know that if I'm too overwhelmed, if I have like massive scripts to learn and like 3 shoots in a day, and then like if I'm filming for like 3 days in a row, like really heavy stuff, I can tell that I'm not going to do a good job. So it's also about like, now I understand not to push myself too much, because when you push yourself too much, then something else isn't going to work properly. So
you're going to suffer in a different area.
Yeah, it's about understanding your body. And I think I've been able now to find a good balance. So I'm happy about that.
You know what I love about you, Scarlett, is that you're so mature for your age, but you still have this amazing, like, young, youthful energy. Like, you're not too mature where it's like, wow, she's 40, but she's like 16, 17, well, she's going on 40. Like, you don't have that older energy. It's just mature. Like, you know what you need to do. You put your work first. You work really hard. You still work hard at school, but you still have fun and you still do things that normal teenagers would do.
Exactly.
You've not lost that.
And that's why I think I've been able to do the stuff that I have, because my mum always says to me that like it's really important that I go out with my friends and that I go to these things, because it's like that's what I'm meant to do. Like I'm 16 and like it is important that I enjoy my time while also working, because I don't want to start resent working because I've missed out on all this stuff with my friends. So I'll always like do a job over going to hang out. Like if it's a great job, going to hang out with my friends, because that is like my friends are my priority, but my work is as well, because it's going to be my future. I'm hoping. So
you don't want to say no to a job
Yeah.
and then obviously they don't ask you again. And that's the difficulty in this career, is you do want to make yourself really available for those big jobs that you do want to do. Because imagine if F1 goes, Scarlett, we need you on Saturday, and you go, no, sorry, I'm going out with my friends. Then I'm going to call you again. You're not using Scarlett then.
She's going out with her friends.
Gosh, how dare she do that? Like, obviously, you need to build that rapport with these brands. But talk to me about moving into that role with F1 Kids. You already said you were quite nervous, but it went well. Commentary is definitely a difficult gig. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I still find commentary quite difficult, but I can feel like how I've improved so much. I remember in Budapest, that was the first time I ever did any commentary. And when I went into that booth, I did not know what to expect. But the thing I like about the F1 Kids commentary is like each of the kids brings something different. So like, you know, we've got like people who are karters, and then like I'm more of like a presenter. So we bring like nice things to balance it out, which I really like. And I also feel like I'm learning each time I do something. Like I'm learning even new terminology that I didn't know before, and like ways to explain things, which has just been amazing. But I really do enjoy the commentary. It can be a bit like, oh, because you have to like say things so quickly, but then I don't want to get it wrong, but you can't doubt yourself. You kind of just have to blurt it out. But I really enjoy it. And each time I do it, I can feel myself getting better and better.
It's more practice. You are going to get that knowledge. And I think you're seeing that now with your commentary. The first one was good, but the next one's better. And then it gets better and better and better. And that's what you can take. So what's been your favourite race that you've commentated on?
Oh, gosh, that's difficult. I've loved commentating on all of them. That's a difficult one.
Has
I'll
there
have to
been
think about
a
it.
standout race for you? And is that, you know, because it's the track? Is it because of what happened?
The Silverstone race where Lewis Hamilton won. I cried a bit. Like, I don't think anyone saw, but I don't know what it was. I think it's a long time to be in there, and it's like everyone wants something exciting to happen. He was getting emotional with his dad, so I sat there and like tears were coming out, and I was like, this is amazing. Lewis Hamilton has done it. We can see how happy he is. And that's definitely been my favorite race I've commentated on so far. It was just amazing because that's like I could feel his emotions through the screen. And also it's like everyone thinks commentary's boring, but it's like when you see things like that, it's like it's so emotional, and to have like you could just tell how happy he was to win. It was like perfect for him
We've
to win
got
at
that moment
Silverstone.
right behind me.
Oh yeah,
actually. Lewis Hamilton, 9 British GP wins.
That's what inspired me to say that.
You saw it behind me. That is such a cool moment though. Like, you must feel so proud with the work that you're doing, you know, to say that you commentated on these amazing races. Surely you feel like so proud of yourself.
I don't think I do, really. I think
Scarlett,
that, like,
you have to.
My mum always tells me that she's proud, but sometimes I like with like F1 stuff, I always think that like I always feel like I need to know more and more. Like I always feel like I don't know enough. And I'm guessing that like a lot of people do feel like that because there's so much to learn. And it is, like, as you said, all about experience. Like the longer you're in it, the more you're going to learn. Exactly. But like I always feel like there's more stuff that I need to know. So I don't know. Sometimes I am proud of myself. Like at the BAFTAs, I was like proud, but like, I don't know.
You should be so proud that
I just enjoy everything, but I never really think much of it. I think it's because like I film and then I go to school and I don't talk about my filming.
Yeah.
Like I get home late usually and then I go to school the next day. So it's like, you know, it's switching between those two things. So I don't really think much of it. And like, you know, when I'm doing things, it's so separate from like my normal, like, you know, school and friend life. And I like to keep it separate because, you know, I go to school to learn and to like see my friends. And then when I'm filming, you know, it's something completely different. But I don't really think too much of it. I just kind of do it and enjoy it and then do the other stuff.
But you do all different types of presenting. You know, you've got more of a journalistic type of presenting, then you've got commentating, which is a different type of presenting. So is it quite difficult to sort of change from one day you're a journalist and then one day you're a commentator? Do you struggle with that, or does it come quite naturally to you?
I don't think I struggle with it, but sometimes, like, if I'm doing like a studio shoot and, you know, I might be talking about something really fun and then I'm talking about maybe like some, like, especially during like the time of like when the war in Ukraine first started, it was obviously, it's still a really sensitive topic. So it's just about, you know, being cautious of that and knowing to switch your tone because, you know, we talk about really fun things on the show, but then we do talk about serious things. It's like in commentary, like we can be talking about some really exciting graphic we have, and then if there's a crash or something goes wrong, you know, we have to be sensitive to that. I think I'm quite good at doing that because I like to think that like I'm quite understanding of people's emotions as well. And I think from interviewing people, like I interviewed a lot of refugees and being sat there with them and feeling their emotions, like I almost like felt it myself. So I always like to think that, you know, I'm always thinking about other people when I'm, you know, talking about them in scripts or when I'm, you know, commentating and trying to understand how other people feel. So I think from being able to do that, then, you know, it helps me switch between different roles because I can kind of like identify with them.
Because you do so many different types of presenting, what would you say your favourite job so far has been?
It's definitely okay. I've got like 2 or 3. So, one has got to be going to Budapest. I mean, that was just incredible because in the span of like a couple days, I did commentary for the first time, pit reporting, talked to drivers. I was on the Sky stage, like grid. It was amazing. Like I was in a pit lane for the first time, like with cars going around with big like headphones on, talking to Ted Kravitz. I mean, that was absolutely incredible. And then also, I think interviewing Sebastian Vettel, that was like he's the first ever F1 driver that I've interviewed, and he was so down to earth. And I was nervous because I was like, you know, 4-time world champion. I thought he might be like a bit, you know, stuck up or something, but he was the complete opposite. Like if you didn't know who he was, you'd think he was just like a normal human being who, you know, a builder or something, like, you know, anyone, like a teacher or something, like a random
Because
job.
he's so lovely and so humble,
He was
isn't
just,
he?
it was incredible. Like he was just so kind, so nice, you know, didn't make me nervous or, you know, any pressure on me at all. So that was really nice. But then, you know, I've also had amazing experiences like, you know, the war in Ukraine. I went to Poland when the war first broke out, and it was just so eye opening, and things like that I think have like they've almost shaped me as who I am. And I think, you know, since experiencing things like that, I think as a person I'm kind of more considerate because I've talked to people personally. Like I've done a report about young carers, I've talked to like refugees, I've done like lots of things like that. So from doing that, I think it's made me a bit more understanding of different people, even like at school and things. So I think I'm just so lucky to have been able to like do things like that and then also do like really exciting things like Formula One, which is like what you were talking about. Like we both get to do so many amazing like different things, which is what makes it so interesting because, you know, we be doing different things each week.
Has there been any challenges that you faced in your career, whether that's motorsport challenges or journalistic challenges, just some hardships that you faced in your career so far?
I think like not getting things, especially with like acting, is always difficult because like, you know, you put a lot of work, even if it's into like a self-tape, as you'll know, or like an audition, like you do put a lot of work, like you analyze things. So it can always be difficult when you don't get things.
Yeah.
But, you know, my mum's always said to me that like, you know, you get put forward for like 100 things, you might get one of them, like sometimes if you're lucky. So I think just being really determined, you know, is good for that. And then also, like, I think another thing that I've faced is definitely like comments from like friends, like especially when I was younger and I was doing like this YouTube series and like commercials and things. I had like a lot of nasty comments, and it is difficult because like as a kid it's like you're just doing things because you love them. I'm still doing things because I love them, but other people weren't doing that. And I do think that like a bit of it was maybe out of jealousy because I was doing like a really fun thing that other people might, I don't know if they did, but they might have wanted to be able to do it too. But that was something that really was difficult for me when I was younger because it would be like I do something and have such a fun time, and then I'd want to talk to like people like my friends at school about it, but then like I couldn't because they wouldn't want to talk to me about it. So it'd be a bit difficult with that. And I think I've kind of carried that like with me as I got older because now at school, like if someone sees something I do, I get really embarrassed. Like I don't want them to talk about it. So I think that's definitely a challenge that I faced. And I only really notice it when I meet like new people that are my age, and I get like a bit embarrassed, like if they aren't in the motorsport world or in the acting world, because like, I guess just from like when I was younger. But then, I mean, if you want to talk about like being a female, I don't think like in the motorsport world I've ever faced any like challenges from other people making comments. Everyone's been really supportive of me, like in the motorsport world. I think the only thing I might have faced is like ideas in my head from myself. So like I had some preconceived ideas that like when I went into the commentary booth for the first time in Budapest, it was all men. And I do remember standing there and I was a bit like, I feel a bit out of place. And I don't think anyone else even noticed it really, because, you know, everyone was just happy to, you know, be there and to be getting that amazing experience and have a go at commentating. But like, I did kind of keep thinking about, like, it didn't affect how I performed, I don't think. But in the back of my head, I was like, you know, it's a bit odd. I'm the only girl in here. Like, I wonder if people are thinking that I don't know as much as them because I'm a girl. But I've never faced anyone like being mean to me or criticizing me for being a woman, which is really nice to see, because I've heard, you know, a lot of women saying that they have, you know, had comments and stuff. So I think, you know, as you said, as times are changing, like, they are more accepting, the industry is more accepting of women, you know, with some amazing females, but there is definitely more to come.
Yeah, I think that's the positive we can take about how much work has been done to make sure that motorsport is accessible for females, and people that maybe would have made nasty comments to
Yeah.
presenters before and broadcasters, they don't get away with it anymore. That's the difference. If you make a comment like that, people can out it on social media, they can go to, you know, HR, they go to whoever, and now there are more
Definitely.
consequences for those types of comments. So I'm so grateful that you've not experienced a lot,
Yeah.
because it is difficult in any industry that's male dominated. When you're a female entering that, it is so difficult. So if we're seeing now, you know, those changes happen and less comments are being made, we're moving in the right direction. Like, Scarlett, what advice can you give to girls or young men that want to enter the industry as a presenter?
So I would say that, like, it might seem like it's pretty like difficult to break into the industry, especially if like you don't feel like you've got anyone who can like guide you. But I think, you know, as we were just talking about, social media does have its negatives, but it has so many positives. Like, it's an incredible way to link up with people and meet new people. And I think posting content is a really, you know, good way. I think finding something niche that you can post about that others aren't, in like a, you know, in a good way that's authentic to you, is really good. And it's really great to, you know, be able to meet with people. But I also think just being kind to everyone you meet is something really, really important. And because, you know, it gets around, like, you know, if you're a nice person or not. And I think everyone's nice, genuinely nice. But, you know, on those bad days, if you're a bit tired, it can be hard to, you know, be really excited and happy. But you don't have to. It's just, you know, to be kind to everyone, because that's what people remember. So I think that's really important. And also just putting yourself out there as much as possible. I mean, not to a point where it's like annoying and people are like, oh, it's the annoying girl. But, you know, like, the worst thing that people can say is no. And also, I think that like LinkedIn, as we were talking about, is just amazing. Like, some people think, oh, it's a bit boring, LinkedIn, you know, old people might use that, but it's a fantastic way. Like, I've gotten loads of jobs and met loads of amazing people off LinkedIn. And then I think if you're actually in the industry, I think one of the most important things, or the most important thing, is to want to do it. Because if you're not wanting to do it, then there's literally no point, because you do have to put a lot of work into it, and it can be quite difficult. So to do that, you do have to want to do it. And then also, I think preparation is really crucial, because, you know, like, when I get a script, or if I get told I'm, you know, going to be interviewing someone, then I'll do loads and loads of research and learn as much as possible so that I feel confident on the day.
And that concludes our very first episode of Top of the Grid. Thank you so much for listening. Scarlett and I have worked so hard on this podcast, and we really want to bring amazing stories, amazing guests with fantastic insights to all of you listening, so that hopefully you learn something, it educates you, or it helps you shape your path into the motorsport industry. Thank you so much for listening.